Some places have to be seen to be believed, but it isn't possible for most people to travel all around the world in search of incredible places. That's what we're here for, to bring these incredible sights to you and tell you their stories. From seemingly impossible feats of construction to mysterious places that are said to be haunted or sacred, this video is a collection of some of the most mysterious and amazing places on planet Earth. Many people believe that a giant race of humans lived on our planet during ancient times. It's even said that archaeological evidence of these giants exists, but is ignored by scientists and historians. Some of the most compelling evidence for giants might be found among the ancient cities of Bashan. You'll find them mentioned in the Bible, where it's said they were built by a mighty race of tall men, known as the Rephaim, and ruled over by King Og. The ruins of these ancient cities still exist in Syria today, and certainly don't appear to have been built by people of normal stature. The doorways of some of the ruins are 9 feet tall, almost 5 feet wide, and almost a foot thick. The remaining roofs are made of enormous singular stones, resting on thick walls. Moving stones of that size into place in one piece ought to have been impossible for people living thousands of years ago, and people of average height would have no need to make walls, doors, or other structures so large. We know that people can grow to 8 or 9 feet tall today in rare cases, so why do we assume that there wasn't a whole race of such people in the distant past? We're all familiar with the concept of the Bermuda Triangle, a part of the world where it's said that anyone who enters may be doomed never to reappear. History is littered with tales of people and ships disappearing in the region. And even in more modern times, a disproportionately large number of planes have vanished in the area. Recently, scientists believe that they might have come up with an explanation for the Bermuda Triangle's seemingly dangerous properties. A study performed by experts from the University of Southampton, England, has demonstrated that an unusually high number of so-called rogue waves form in this part of the Atlantic Ocean between Puerto Rico, Bermuda, and Miami, sometimes reaching heights of up to 1,000 feet. The waves are caused by storms heading into the area from 3 different directions, and then colliding with devastating consequences for any ship caught in their path. If a wave that high was to hit the land, it would cause colossal damage, potentially wiping out entire cities. Even if their theory is correct, though, it still only tells part of the story. We still have no explanation for all the missing planes. Even if you're not a big believer in the paranormal, it would take a brave soul to spend a night at the Banff Springs Hotel in Alberta, Canada. It's said to be the most haunted location in North America, and even if the tales of a man who murdered his family before taking his own life there aren't true, there's something unusually going on with one of the hotel rooms. According to popular belief, the grisly event happened in room 873 of the hotel, and room 873 no longer exists. The room numbering skips from 872 to 874, and the only clue that 873 was ever there at all is the paneling on the floor and the space for the light above the former doorway. As if that weren't spooky enough, there's also the ghost bride of Banff Springs, said to be the specter of a woman who perished when she fell down the grand staircase and still roams those stairs, occasionally making it as far as the ballroom. The beautiful hotel has embraced its haunted reputation, offering Halloween tours as special events every year. In April 2019, the discovery of some ancient Roman frescoes was reported in the vicinity of Zeugma in Turkey. That's not necessarily surprising, given the fact that the area was once under Roman control. But what is surprising is the presence of Russian inscriptions on those frescoes. The frescoes that have been found there in the past are exceptionally realistic and vivid, including the face of a so-called gypsy girl with eyes that are said to follow you around the room. But it's the presence of small Russian words on some of the more recently discovered mosaics that are fascinating more historians today. The official narrative of history suggests that the Romans never met the Slavs, because the Slavs arrived in Europe after the Roman Empire had receded. So what could possibly explain the seeming blend of Slavic and Roman culture in these mosaics? It would seem there are only 2 possible explanations. One would be that the Romans clung on to this part of the world for far longer than anyone thought they did, and the other is that the Slavs arrived much earlier than we currently believe. Either one of those situations would involve rewriting much of what we think we know about European history. We think of New York in the USA as one of the world's most modern cities, but travel a little out of New York to Shale Creek Preserve, and you'll find a stunning ancient mystery. There, sitting behind a 35-foot-tall waterfall, is a flame inside a grotto that's said to have been lit by Native Americans thousands of years ago and still burns today. It's only 8 inches high and never spreads, but equally it's never been put out by all the water that surrounds it. Understandably, the whole area has been given the nickname Eternal Flame Falls. Scientists used to believe that the flame was sustained by gas pockets rising from the shale bedrock, but a more recent study has proven that the shale isn't hot enough to create sufficient gas for this to occur. Something different, possibly something hidden deep underground, must be feeding the eternal flame, and scientists currently have no idea what that might be. They've almost given up on trying to explain the mystery, so now it's become an enigmatic landmark for hikers to marvel at as they pass through the area. You all know what a bullseye on a dartboard looks like, but here's one that you can clearly see from a little further away than the end of an oak. In fact, this bullseye is so enormous that you can see it from above the Earth's atmosphere in outer space. It's called the richot structure, and it's a geological wonder in Mauritania, right in the middle of the Sahara Desert. Because it's surrounded by so much emptiness, it's difficult to get a sense of the scale from these images, but it's 30 feet wide. Just like the eternal flame in New York, scientific theories about this natural phenomenon have changed over the years. For a long time, it was thought to be the site of an asteroid impact because of its circular shape, but it's now believed to be a geological dome that's slowly eroding. It's thought that the desert floor blistered and cracked as a bubble of molten magma formed beneath it and has spent the past few millennia flattening out again as it's weathered by the elements. The mystery of the Nazca Lines in Peru isn't so much about how they were drawn as it is about why they were drawn. These massive lines and geometric shapes on the desert floor, which sometimes take the form of animals and humanoids and cover an area of more than 200 square miles, are far too big to be seen in full from ground level. There aren't any hills in the area large enough to allow a good vantage point from which to direct the drawing of some of the 900-foot-long glyphs either. The only way anyone could appreciate these works of art properly is by flying above them. But that wasn't an option for the ancient people who drew them over 2,500 years ago. How did they even know whether they were executing the task correctly if they couldn't see what they were doing? There's much we don't know about the Nazca people, and so it's impossible for historians to explain what the significance of the Nazca Lines might be, or why they went to so much trouble to carve them 2 feet deep in the sand. Most people don't believe in vampires, but perhaps that's because they've never heard the tale of the Highgate Cemetery vampire of London, England. Highgate Cemetery is a prestigious and popular burial site, holding the remains of famous people like Karl Marx, writer Douglas Adams, poet George Eliot, and many more. It's more famous, though, for the vampire activity that's said to have gone on here during the 1960s and 1970s. The first time a vampire was spotted in the cemetery was Christmas Eve 1969, followed by several more vampire sightings in the year that followed. Before long, tales of a man said to be a vampire and a practitioner of black magic said to be buried in the cemetery began to circulate in the local press, and by March 1970, the press coverage had reached a fever pitch. More than 100 people stormed the cemetery on March 13th that year in search of vampires, and even when they found none, the stories didn't stop. A woman was found dead in suspicious circumstances in the cemetery in August that year, and the vampire was blamed. A man was arrested at the site the following week with a crucifix and a wooden stake on his person. Things have calmed down in the years since, but we can't help but wonder what provoked so much excitement in the first place. The giant heads of Easter Island are famous all over the world, even though they're not heads at all. The enormous sculptures all have bodies, which are buried beneath the statues and run deep underground. While they've been studied extensively over the years, the question of why their specific locations were chosen remained unsolved until January 2019, when a study carried out by US-based archaeologists concluded that each of the megaliths had been deliberately placed close to an ancient source of fresh water. The larger the freshwater source is, the larger the corresponding statue is. The art of building one of the statues, which are known as moas, might have been a way of a community claiming a source of water as their own. That would explain why many of them appear to have been created by different artisans, and why they seem to have slightly different facial features. It would even explain why several examples of moais have been discovered so far inland from the majority of them, which sit on the coast. The theory still doesn't satisfy everybody on account of the fact that water markers like this don't occur anywhere else in the world. But it's the best theory anyone has so far. It doesn't take much of a leap of the imagination to work out why Antarctica's blood falls got their name. First noticed in 1911, the frozen waterfall on the side of the Taylor Glacier looks exactly like blood oozing out of a wound in the ice itself. That's obviously not what's really happening, and nor is the strange red color caused by algae, which was the initial suspicion of the geologists who found it. The unusual shade is down to a colony of microbes inside the water that is, to all intents and purposes, alien. The microbes have spent 2 million years trapped beneath a thick layer of ice, cut off from the rest of the world and evolving independently in a place that has no light, no oxygen, and no heat. They've turned the water into a type of primordial ooze that's become red because of its extremely high salinity and iron content. The waterfall is actually a fissure in the glacier, allowing some water to escape without allowing anything else inside to pollute the ecosystem. The fact that this near-miraculous biological process has happened serves as evidence that life can exist in places that we'd normally consider such a thing to be impossible. If Blood Falls wasn't creepy enough for you, let's head to Turkmenistan and check out the Gates of Hell. This enormous burning crater has been raging in the Karakum Desert since it was ignited deliberately in 1971, and might continue to burn for another 500 years or more. Technically known as the Darvaza gas crater, this flaming hole in the ground was created when a Soviet drilling operation unexpectedly broke into a colossal natural gas cavern below the ground. Realizing that they were about to be engulfed in a potentially deadly cloud of methane and facing the prospect of their drilling rig falling into the hole, the Soviets decided that the safest thing to do would be to set the gas on fire and let it burn off. They expected the fire to be done in a few days. When that didn't happen, they extended their estimate to a few weeks. It's now been almost 50 years, and it might never go out at all. Despite its fearsome appearance, it's perfectly safe to stand around the anomaly, and it's even become a popular spot for wild camping. If you flew over the Richot archipelago in Australia and looked out of your window, you could be forgiving for thinking that someone had dropped an enormous pink piece of chewing gum on the ground. Get closer though, and you'll quickly realize that it's an impossibly bright pink lake. This is Lake Hillier, and the question of where it got its unusual shade from and how it maintains it has been baffling scientists for decades. Pink lakes aren't entirely unheard of. There's one in Senegal, for example, and there's even another one in Australia known as Pink Lake, but their coloring has been adequately explained by science. This one remains an enigma. The high salinity of the lake probably plays a role, and a species of algae known as Dunaliella salina might be contributing too. But salinity and algae tend only to discolor a lake for a few months of each year. Lake Hillier is pink all year round, and the water even stays pink when you bottle it and take it home with you. The ongoing mystery might explain why the island is currently off limits to visitors and is marked as a place of research. What does the Australian government know about the lake that nobody else does? Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching and see you soon!